Let me pull up the Facebook here.
Just 1 minute. Hey Mo,
Hey Ricky, how you feeling?
I'm great because the doctor is in.
Blessed to be back another Wednesday night. The doctor is indeed in, and we're talking about pretty much our favorite subject. Like this is, you know how to say people beating their drum. This is our drum, right?
Our
Clinical
drum
trials.
is our drum. Is our drum.
That's
Clinical
it.
trials. And we have a great guest today. And actually, she's bringing all kinds of stuff to the table. Dominique, and she's from Share. And Share is one of our awesome partners. They provide so many resources in the community. I think they really started kind of being a New York-based organization, but they really are a national presence for Black women and Latinas. And so she just is coming off spending the week here in DC. She's actually here in my neighborhood, lobbying on Congress with the National Breast Cancer Coalition.
Yes.
So Dominique,
I
so
love
great
it.
to have you.
Dominique, we are thrilled. We're thrilled to have you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me give a couple stats here because there was an article that just came out in JAMA recently, March 8th, actually, racial and ethnic representation of participants in U.S. clinical trials of new drugs and biologics. And the article, there was a letter to the editor from the FDA that said that clinical trial representation for Black and African American participants from 2015 through 19 represented 15 and 19%. And the authors refuted that. And they said this is erroneous because it's misleading. When you think about the clinical trial participation for heart disease, 3%, oncology trials, less than 5% Black men. And in America, in African American women, only 2% of participants were Black women versus 84% white women. So we got our work cut out for us. Dominique, tell us what you're over there doing and what inspired you. How did you even get into this work?
Well, thank you, thank you. I mean, it's great to be in here in DC. Everyone is on fire. The word of the
week.
day.
It's a crazy week here, man.
Oh my gosh, I was in DC in 2018, and that was my first time doing the lobby day and doing a lot about this work. And I'm telling you, everyone, the topic is clinical trials and people of color. That whatever 15% or whatever they said, I don't know about that. I never heard
know where those people are.
That high. And the scientists and the researchers are trying to do whatever they can do to incorporate more Black women, more Black people into these trials, because there's no way we can have a real scientific base. There's no way we can end all of these ailments if we don't have a realistic number of people of color part of these trials. They're finally realizing that medicine has been based off of almost only white bodies, and it cannot be that way if we're going to truly discover a cure, because we're a mixed group of people, right? We are a mixed society, we are a mixed planet. So
it's because those numbers have been scrubbed, and the thing is, I think that they're trying to say, oh, the situation is not so bleak. Oh, well, look, in the last 4 years, or look at a snapshot in time. But when you look at it in totality, the numbers really are abysmal. And rather than put lipstick on a pig, we need to be addressing the issue. And my question, I guess, for you, and then I know you'll tell us more about your story, is why is it so bad to begin with? Why do these numbers stay low and all the studies come out? We need more diversity. We need more, you say that the doctors and the researchers are trying. Where are they failing?
Well, it's a multifaceted answer, right? So I remember going to another conference because, again, the word of the day is disparities, right? So everyone is trying to answer this question. And I remember one of the doctors saying that one of her patients, she enrolled her in the trial, but the issue was transportation, right? So if the clinical trial is being held, somewhere, I live in New York City. So if the clinical trial is being held somewhere downtown, maybe 34th Street, and you have a patient who, let's say, lives in Harlem, let's say lives in Washington Heights. So for those of people who aren't familiar with New York City, let's say, the clinical trial is maybe 15 miles from the person or 20 miles from the person. If this person does not have a car, this person would have to rely on public transportation. Maybe this person, I don't know if any of you watch the news, maybe this person is not comfortable getting on public transportation.
Because of
COVID, if this person already has cancer and is sick, do you want to get on the train with all these people? You know what I mean? So transportation is an issue. Finance could be an issue. Maybe this person cannot pay for that cab ride. Maybe this person does not have enough money for the Metro card. So all these little things that they did not think of, because the current representation, the current group that they're using has access to these things. They have a car, they might have a driver, they might not have to worry about, what they're going to eat later today or what they're going to feed their children. So these are all things that people didn't think about before, but now that there are more Black women signing up for clinical trials and letting these doctors know, this is the reason why I did not come on Tuesday. And, and that is what we need. Or that is what we need. So
or frankly, the trial should pay for that. The trial should pay for the transportation.
Agree.
Right.
I mean, the trial should take care of that cost. That's like, price, cost of doing business, for God's sakes.
Right. And we have some of the doctors telling us, and the researchers telling us that that's what they're trying to build in to these trials. 2 Metro cards a day, Uber gift card, for the week. Little things like that make a big difference.
They do. And it's part of the budget for the trial, for goodness sakes, right?
It should be, but it doesn't always work that way. And then the smaller institutions, it has to come out of their institutional budget or from their foundation grants or other things. And there needs to be a mechanism for that. Even if there's a mechanism at the pharma company where you have to apply for that, right? Maybe another application where the host institution has to apply for transportation grants or something. But you're right, that really should be built into the budget. Absolutely.
Even
so, Dominique, how'd you
about timing? If I work from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock at night, can I do a clinical trial session at 12 o'clock in the afternoon? No, I cannot. So though all these little things have to be taken into consideration, and I'm glad that things are finally changing. The ball is finally rolling on that.
Sounds like we need a complete overhaul of this whole system, because if it's not working, and it hasn't been, but the way that we do it only allows people to come in from 9 to 5 or from this to this, and there's no weekend hours, there's no evening availability, there's no transportation, there's no, and we keep coming up short. Sounds like the whole thing needs to be overhauled. I wonder if anybody is talking about that rather than just trying to tweak a system that's been failing and failing and failing.
Well, you know how they say sometimes.
Are we losing her?
That's hilarious. It's almost like you got censored because you were getting ready to say something real juicy. I could tell. And it was...
I went out for a second. Sorry, guys.
You did, right at the good part too, because you said, it's almost like, and it was like they just censored you right out.
Right. They didn't want to hear it, right?
Go ahead and dish. We want to hear it.
And I was thinking the same thing as I heard, people speaking about the issues. Like you were saying, sometimes it's easy just to put a little bit of fix-a-flat on the tire, but sometimes you need brand new tires. And I think the people now post-pandemic are really realizing the pandemic has shown people that were ignorant to a lot of our issues. Now they can see, you know what I mean?
Yeah, now we're hot. Now
we're the hot topic. Now the funding's coming. Right?
Oh my God, health disparities are a thing. Hello.
We're the ticket of the day. So hopefully, there's no more fix-a-flat. Hopefully there's new tires being put on this clinical trials, wagon, and we're going to actually get some actual results.
Well, we have to hold their feet to the fire because we
Yeah.
see this, every so often, whatever's the most popular thing, wherever the funding is where the interest goes. And
Yeah.
that funding it dries up at the top and never trickles down to the people that need it the most, and nothing ever changes. So I think as grassroots organizations looking at what the accountability metrics and measures are, how do we put that stuff into place so we can hold those people accountable is going to be really important,
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, being in DC this week, I saw so many people on fire. I was able to witness, all these women protesting, what has happened with the Supreme Court leak. And even with my conference that I had went to, about, breast cancer, everyone seems to have a fire and zeal. And I hope that, we as Black women can take that and do the same thing in regards to clinical trials, because it's our body at the end of the day. And it's like, we're not in control of our bodies, but as soon as we get out there and say, okay, this is what I want to see, it's a powerful thing, and it's very possible.
It is.
So tell us about your fire. Where did your fire come from?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, my fire came from my dad, actually. He was 39 years old when he got a diagnosis of having renal kidney failure. And I watched him when I was growing up, going through the process of hospital after hospital and doctor after doctor. And he eventually did get a kidney transplant, but he had complications, and he ended up having a heart attack as a complication to the renal failure.
Oh, gosh.
And watching him go through that, they're something that we're still dealing with, the 24 months of waiting to get Medicare and, Social Security disability. I didn't understand it much as a child, but as I grew up, I was like, this is what this man went through as a single parent, and getting older and joining SHARE and seeing the women that I work with have breast cancer, that have metastatic breast cancer, and they're 10, 15, 20 years later going through what he went through, it breaks my heart. And that is a fire that has kept me throughout these years, seeing people who don't have good insurance. My father had excellent insurance, and I saw him go through the rigmarole, being a Black man, being someone who couldn't always speak up for himself, and my family really just gathering around him and having to be his voice sometimes. And I say, well, what if he didn't have that voice? Where would I be? So that's the fire that is inside of me. And that's what keeps me, part of this, and going to the Capitol and being able to lobby is one of the most amazing things I've ever done in my life.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but it's great. I mean, I think the time is now for all these conversations, and I don't know how long it's going to last, but I want to keep this fire going, and we're trying to do that in every way, so, my daughter runs, my oldest daughter runs Supermajority. Check out supermajority.com. And so yesterday morning, she was like out the door, and I was with her kids because she was at Supreme Court speaking, rallying, and whatever, screaming all day. But we need more, she's a great testament to her generation and how they're not going to take this stuff anymore. And the stuff that we kind of almost had to accept, it's not going to happen with these young women. They're going to fight and fight and fight to get what they want. And so I think now is such a good time for all of us to be in this fight, doing this work and demanding attention and demanding the right care. So
I guess it's a good question though, Ricky, in terms of, so much of the argument that's going on right now is about, who gets to decide about women's bodies, right? What's happening with our bodies, with our uterus, with our breasts, with our, what can the average person do and how can they feel empowered? Dominique, can you tell us any of the stories that you're seeing from some of the women, or anything that you've heard, or particularly some moving examples of things that, are that we don't get a chance to see every day? When we see that group of women down there storming the Capitol, I shouldn't use that word, storming the Capitol.
I know,
right?
That's a bad word.
In a good way.
Protest.
Right? Yeah.
Peacefully protesting.
Right.
That's right. There's some really good people on all sides down there, and so when we talk about that, they're more than just faces, right? They're stories,
They
they're
are.
mothers, they're daughters. Tell us about some folks you might have connected with, just sort of globally.
What was so great about that day, one of the many things that was great about that day is that when we were we were lobbying that day and going to different politicians' offices, and we've got our little tweed suits on, and we're being very formal and things like that, and we got our makeup on,
right?
and we're walking, and it's DC is not, it's quiet, and then we're walking, and we hear these, like, as we get closer to the Supreme Court, which I didn't realize was so close to everything, I was like, okay,
it's right there. Yeah.
The shouting, and we look, and there's a huge group gathered, and it's women who, I mean, you have from in their teens all the way to women who are probably in their 70s, and they're like, they got their bandanas on, and they got their signs, and even the guys are out there supporting the women they're with, and they're standing there. Some of them are waiting patiently, sitting by the park, and it was so beautiful. I mean, I was on my way to go speak to a politician, but we stopped, and one of the ladies in our group, she ended up in the front, and she's like cheering them on, and I was crying, like my mascara is running. I've never been to a protest before, but it was just so meaningful that all these women and men were there in support of all women. It's not just for one woman, it's for all women. And it's just so moving to see. And then you walk, you go down to the Congress, and it's, everyone's buzzing. And then you walk back, and it was more people had come at this point. And at a certain time, I will say, at about 5:30, you could see the women that were getting off of work came to the protest. And I'm like, wow, you have women in their suits. You have women who are leaving school. You have women who are leaving college. And it was just the most beautiful thing. And when you see things like that, it's just like, there's nothing that we can't do if we can get together.
Right. There's nothing we can't do. I love the hashtag too from yesterday. Someone you love. Hashtag someone you love. Like, who isn't touched by all of these things? And so, and I hate that this is happening. It's a horrible, horrible state for our country. But I love that we're rallying around health and a health issue. And this is not a political issue. This is a personal issue, and this is a health issue. I mean, you're making a health decision about your body. And so
it begs the question, why hasn't it been addressed before in a really in this type of way? What's happened now, Ricky and Dominique, I guess? Why now when, breast cancer, like you said, affects everybody, 1 in 8, right? All women. This isn't an
someone
issue
you love.
Unique to Black women, right? Someone someone you love, someone who's taught you, somebody in your church and your wherever. So what makes it a hot topic now?
I mean, it's sexy, what sexy sells, and there's more, it was beautiful also walking through DC. You see it's very diverse. You see so many Black women in positions of power. So as more of us, have positions of power, of course, more of our issues are going to come to the forefront. What we have to be careful of is people love using us as a surface issue. The important thing is that we, of course, have our own groups, our own non-for-profits. We support that because we will actually, get to the meat and potatoes. Sometimes when we, don't have our own groups, they will get the funding, but like you said, the funding will stay at the top, and it will not trickle down. So we have to also, as Black women and Black people, support our own groups as well as the large groups. We can't do, much without, larger groups of funding, but we also have to support our individual non-for-profits and things like that. And I think if we do, we'll be able to, get to the promised land much quicker.
Right.
Love them.
We all have to work together. We have
Yeah.
to work together, you know. No, and Mo, I don't know why the timing is right, but I guess it really started with George Floyd.
I think
And
so.
then, and then we had COVID. And
Right.
and it made us think about, all the disadvantages Black people went with COVID. But I don't really know how it happened, why it happened, but it happened and we are here. And I want this seat at the table, and I'm showing up with my napkin and my silverware and my plate and my wine glass and my whatever. And I'm not leaving, right?
Right.
We're at the table now. So we're here, and I think we have to take advantage of it. But to your point, Dominique, we can't let it take advantage of us. And
Right.
so I think we have to really, there's this delicate dance that we have to do, even within the breast cancer community of our white breast cancer organizations, to say, we want to be there with you. We want to support you. We want to help you. But guess what? We are the voice of Black women.
Right. I
We
think
are,
especially, Ricky, because on the one hand, it's great for them to use their platform to amplify those voices. But I think that, where there is funding, that's where the organizations go in order to sustain
yeah,
their efforts and their lifeblood. And I think there is a balance that we can strike that doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like usury. It doesn't feel like lip service or performative. It feels like, no, we're deeply invested in this initiative, whether you recognize that it's time because of George Floyd, or whether you've always wanted to and now the funding has become available, or whether
right.
you never really paid attention and your eyes are open. I don't think that there's a penalty for that. You know what I mean? So I think that any organization that is starting to realize and put forth the very valid and true efforts, and that looks like inclusivity, right? Because we do a lot of diversity and equity stuff, but the inclusivity of us and into those initiatives early on, into those funding mechanisms, into elevating, these grassroots organizations, that shows, I think, that really shows where their priority is and where their heart is, because it's not enough to just mention us in the room, right? You're supposed to invite us into the room and pull up a chair and make space. That's what true allyship looks like. It looks like making space and making that table larger. So the organizations that are doing that, it's going to show in their work.
It's going to show. And you know what? We're seeing results from, like, when we trial. We're seeing results. We're getting so many people signing up for trials, which is such a blessing. Thank you, God. But because it's our voice. And so I think it's, you can go on the internet right now and search clinical trials and get all the same words on all the different websites, and it's not resonating with our audience. But because of our voice and how we're talking about it to each other, for each other, by each other, with each other, it's a different conversation. And I think now we're able to use our voice as a platform to talk about this, and that we're the voice of trust. And I treasure that we have that trust with our patients and with our community, but we have to respect that and really help them learn how to talk to doctors, how to talk to each other, how to talk and demand the care they deserve. But we have to,
Dominique,
respect.
were there researchers and doctors there also? Because I think that too can be a missing piece, is that the patients' voices are loud, but research is conducted by scientists and by doctors, and the scientists can come up with the best studies, but if the physicians aren't explaining it to the patients in the right way, and if they're not advocating for the patients, then that's where the trial can fail. There's so many different places where something can go wrong and that patient gets lost from that trial forever.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one of the great things that I've been seeing at the conference itself. We had doctors of color, and we had one who specifically spoke about her experience in Boston, and being an Asian doctor who has a very large African American population that she works with. And it was so interesting, hearing her perspective, because it was something that I've never heard before. And, also having researchers of color. We had a doctor who's also a researcher give a link that was found between a cancer diagnosis and homelessness within Black women who get a diagnosis and don't have the same type of coverage that a lot of her white patients have. So to hear this is so powerful. And I'm like, well, how come I've never heard this before? We hear this word disparities get thrown around and, you know, inequality, but to actually be in the room with people of color who look like you, who are telling you about their research, it's so meaningful. And I'm like, well, this is my first time hearing it. What about the other people who are in cancer advocacy who haven't heard it? Or what about the regular people who have cancer who haven't heard it? So it needs to be on a bigger platform.
Yeah, Melissa spoke at the conference, Dr. Melissa. So,
yes.
I mean, but, you know, Melissa, you know, badassness all around. She's part of this growing body of research that's validating that, guess what? A Black breast cancer cell looks different from a white breast cancer cell. So what does that mean? What does that mean for all the work that's being done? What does that mean for all the drugs that we're taking? What does that mean for clinical trial participation? It means that we have to do it differently, and we need different drugs.
Ricky, they even discussed the transgender population. And I was like, oh my God, I never hear about the transgender population.
Right.
And
so good.
the research that they're doing with transgender men, so women who've, you know, transitioned to male, how they notice they really don't get breast cancer. So what is it about them that could affect us as, you know, cisgender women? I've never heard that before. And this is coming from not just, you know, Black and Latino doctors, but coming from Caucasian doctors as well. So their ears are open, their eyes are open, and hopefully their mind is open, and hopefully we'll get closer to a cure.
And at the same time, you know, the American College of Pediatrics just put out a statement saying that they want to end, and they're planning to end race-based medicine. Right? Because the way we use race in medicine has been historically to say, well, Black people get more kidney failure, so we're going to do da-da-da. Black people this, that, and it's the thought is that in the era of personalized medicine, we need to personalize the medicine to the individual, because Black is not a monolith, right? It can be a lot of different things. How do we balance the need to not discard race? Because clearly there's something here when we say an entire group of people whose skin tones are brown are having this issue, right? How do we not discount race, but how do we move toward more personalized medicine, I guess is the question.
Well, I think part of it, Mo, is that, you know, so many patients are in community hospitals.
Yes.
Do you think they're practicing precision medicine in community hospitals? I don't think so. So our patients aren't even positioned to have access to precision healthcare, but that's how it needs to go. And you see this every day, Dominique, right? I mean, in your work, right?
When you're saying that, the doctor from Boston said something so unique. As soon as you said that, she said, let's say there's 6 major hospitals in Boston, right? So let's say, like, you know, Tufts, maybe Harvard, I'm just making up, you know, names, and a 3rd hospital. Well, those 3 hospitals all share the same system. So she can call up, you know, Tufts and, you know, say, I need, you know, Dr. Monique's records. And in 2 seconds, she'll have it. But the 3 other hospitals are in different systems. So she's calling another hospital and saying, you know, I need XYZ right now. I need to know this about my patient. Nothing. She's called 10 to 15 times, nothing. This woman drove in her car to go to that hospital to get this patient's records. Now, she is very unique because most doctors do not have the kind of time to go and drive to get the patient's records. So what if you're one of those patients that you're not going to get that from your doctor?
Right.
So precision medicine at a community hospital is probably not likely, you know, so.
Well, and it depends on what it is. You know, I speak for the voice of community hospitals. I'm the medical director of a community cancer program, and it does happen and it is possible, but it's not the forefront of the cutting edge of research because of the barriers there, right? So the standard of care in terms of precision medicine checking people's tumors to see what that biology is and tailoring the therapies to it. That part of it's happening. But when we talk about the cutting edge of research, right, and really getting to the nitty gritty of what your molecules are doing in this petri dish, that stuff does not happen at community cancer centers, where 80% of Black and brown people get their care.
Okay.
And so it does create the next question I have for you and the rest of the conundrum, rather than, say, well, the community hospitals are the issue, or where, this is where it's not happening. What's happening at the top? Why are all the resources staying in one place?
Right. Why aren't they?
Which she did speak to, and she said the same thing that you said. Where does the funding go? That's the big question mark. And unfortunately, she's saying it went to the same places over and over again. So how do we get it to go to the places that they haven't been sending it to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we have to change everything. One of my favorite quotes is Einstein: "A problem cannot be solved within which the framework it was created."
Right.
And until people, doctors, systems, whatever, admit that, maybe we need to do something differently. And that's where we need to be. And I feel like that's what we have to do in this moment. That now's the time where people are saying, maybe that's not working for me. And one of the things I hate to hear from people is, I've been fighting the breast cancer fight for 40 years. We've been around for 20 years. We've been doing this work I don't want this job.
Right.
I don't want, if I'm still doing this in 25 years, I failed. It's like the weatherman. I can keep doing the same thing and saying the wrong thing every day, work too close, make a lot of money, and be wrong.
I love it. I say the same thing, Ricky. I say, listen, number one, put me out of a job. I can be a farmer.
Out of a job, damn it. Put me out of a job.
But two, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Wayne Dyer, that's my favorite quote. Right. And I'm back to this thought about where is the new idea and the new vision, and where is the newness? So Dominique, is there anything that you saw? Is there legislation? Are there things you want to talk about that sort of tells us what hope there is on the horizon? Like, what sorts of things were we lobbying for?
Sure. So, we together, my organization with NBCC, we are lobbying for a few things, but one of our first priorities is, asking for extra money for, so a lot of people don't know, a lot of the breast cancer funding comes from the Department of Defense. Yes. And, we have, of course, we get a great amount of money, but more is always necessary. It's crazy that it's 2022 and we still do not have a cure for breast cancer. So that's one of the primary things that we were asking for. Another thing we're asking for, which it goes in line with my story because my father went through it, is that in order to get Medicaid and to be on disability, for disability, there's a 5-month wait. And for Medicare, there's a 24-month wait for women who have metastatic breast cancer.
Now, 24, you said 24 months?
24 months, so 2 years.
For metastatic breast cancer?
For metastatic breast cancer. Now, I don't know if people know the statistics. Ricky, you could definitely delve into this more, but the last statistic that I know, that there are metastatic women who their life expectancy after getting metastatic is 3 years.
3 years.
So the analogy that one of my my colleagues used to tell the politicians was that, imagine you have a heart attack, right? And you wake up and you're in the hospital, and the doctor says, we have something for you, we're going to help you, but you got to wait 24 months. And if you hear that, you're going to be like, well, what are you talking about?
You're trying to kill me. You're trying to kill me.
Right. So, and we have another woman who lobbied with us who is a metastatic patient, and she said, I'm on a medication that I believe is saving my life. And what if I was someone, who didn't have good access to healthcare, and I didn't even have access to that medication? I may not make it those 24 months or those 3 years. So when people hear it like that, they're kind of like, we see people's faces like, oh, wow, yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense. I would have to wait 24 months. So that is one of the biggest things that we are trying to get change. It doesn't really make sense as a government. We spend so much money on other things. Why don't we take care of the women that are right here? And that's, two of our big points.
I know that there was a woman that spoke about cancer moonshot at the conference. I heard that luncheon the other day, and I spoke on a panel about that last week with with the National Minority Quality Forum. And when we had COVID, we had Dr. Fauci,
Yes.
right? When COVID was hot, Dr. Fauci was on TV almost every day, if not every day, right? A couple times a day. And he was directing the activity, whether telling us how many people died or telling us about the vaccine, but he was like managing the farm. I felt like he was the person, like the point person at the top saying, here's what's going on. Here's what the government is doing about it, but I got you, right? In whatever capacity, whatever role he could play, right? So for cancer, we don't have that. So when we talked about cancer moonshot, I'm like, where is the person managing the farm? So if the government's going to change whatever, would get rid of cancer in 50 years, whatever the data, whatever the numbers are, like, who's doing it? And we have all of these fiefdoms of people doing great work. I mean, I think all of us are doing great. We can all go home at night and pat ourselves on the back and say, oh, you did a really good job. You gave a hug, you found a drug, whatever, every day. But until we are working together with some kind of leadership, we need a Dr. Fauci to kind of say,
the CDC. Yeah, the NIH, head of NIH, I think, just stepped down and resigned. And so, there's a lot of shakeup at the top, and the credibility, I think, of the leadership for a lot of these governing bodies, CDC, FDA, NIH, are a little bit in question right now as a result of the misinformation that went on during COVID, right? Because we got so much misinformation that people don't know who to listen to and who to trust. Dominique, you see that in the work that you do with SHARE, that people are really having a tough time even believing the validity of scientific studies and cancer research and all that stuff?
Oh my gosh. I mean, do we have another 2 hours? I mean, I could talk about that all day. I'll start with like the beginning of COVID. People didn't know whether to get the vaccine or not, whether it was safe. It was so much misinformation amongst cancer patients. I mean, let's just even go back to people of color. People telling me, oh, it's a conspiracy to kill Black people. Right. It's this, it's that. I mean, we just heard everything imaginable. We heard it, and then remember that, well, Black people can't get COVID. It was just something crazy. And then as time went on, and like you were saying, Dr. Fauci was coming on TV every day, and having that one person really does help. Some people were bringing up that the director of the NIH just resigned, and that was a big topic at the conference.
Well, yeah,
it's very important, the people that you have in power, because we look to those people to kind of tell us, hey, we should be doing this or doing that. But in this environment, it came up. We're in DC, and people are asking, politically, health has never been such a big issue, and now it's
until COVID.
It's the issue, whether it be COVID, breast cancer, and I don't know what direction we're really headed in. I want to be optimistic. I'm always an optimistic person, but we're living in very interesting times. That's what I get from everything I'm hearing.
And you know what, Dominique? Breast cancer is a matter of life and death for Black women. It is our most fatal disease. We can't afford. And I was in this room last week with all these cancers, and they're like, well, what's the most important? I was like, breast cancer. You show me the numbers for any other cancer to say what the mortality rate looks like relative to white people. And we are it. And so we
aggressive, right?
More aggressive and
younger.
Getting a younger, more aggressive, less treatment options. And now I can't even, Mo, we talk about this all the time. I don't even want to think about what's going to look like in a year, because people haven't gotten screened in the last 2 years.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? So some of this funding and these efforts need to really go to return to screening campaigns, and everybody wants to move beyond COVID and sweep it under the rug and say, okay, we're post-COVID, but that is not the case. And I think, Ricky, Our grassroots organizations as well need to be pushing for return to screening funding, because at those COVID dollars, the billions and billions of dollars that went to a lot of different campaigns about wearing masks and all that stuff, guess what? You got billions of dollars to tell people to wear masks, and they're not even enforcing mask wearing regulations anymore. Whereas people who need mammograms, they still need them. If you didn't get one, you still need one.
You still need one.
Know? And so I think we need to, that's an untapped area, because those funds are going to dry up and they're going to reappropriate them somewhere else. But screening was down 90%, breast, cervical, colon cancer. And what do you think is going to happen, and who you think is going to happen to the most?
You know it. You know it's going to be us. So we got to be ready. We got to be ready. So
what is SHARE, Dominique? Tell us about SHARE.
Yeah, tell us what you do.
Sure, I will definitely. So SHARE, we're a nonprofit. We've been around for about 50 years now. SHARE was actually started by an oncologist. He noticed that, talking to his patients, that they were telling him that they didn't tell their children, they weren't telling their husbands that they had a breast cancer diagnosis. He noticed that they were going to the doctor alone, and it was something that, he really bothered him. So he spoke to his wife, and he said, these women are saying this to me. And she told him, like, this is a stigma, not everyone is gonna want to tell the whole world. And, mind you, this was, 50, 60 years ago. So,
you didn't even say cancer back then.
Yeah. Right. She was like, of course not. So
some of my patients still call it the C word. They won't even say the word cancer.
Right. So he, him and his wife started a support group. And from that support group, they were able to, start an organization and have, multiple support groups for women. So, and hope, with the hopes that they would be able to, tell their family, their friends that, about this, and make it less of a stigma. So what I do at SHARE, I have a program called the Ambassador Program. We are an outreach for Black women, and we go into different communities of color, and we pre-COVID, I hate saying post-COVID, pre-COVID, we, did health fairs, we went to churches, schools, hair salons, nail salons, wherever they would have us, we would give presentations, we give out our information. And, because of COVID, wonderful, even though COVID was a terrible thing, but wonderful things have come out of COVID, if you think about it. We were able to go nationwide. We do presentations via Zoom. We do things via Facebook Live. We
came out of COVID. We
came out of COVID.
Right. We came out of COVID. Absolutely.
Right. We came out of COVID.
It's a different world, and we have to keep up with the changes in our world. So we do whatever we can do to connect women to resources, and prevention is very important. Knowing your body, that's probably the number one thing that we teach. If something is wrong, for 2 weeks or more, you got to tell somebody, you got to go to the doctor, you got to check yourself. If something doesn't feel right, nobody knows you better than you. And, we lead in the community with that message. And that's pretty much what I do for my organization. I let women of color, women who look like me, know how important, it is to know your body. I can't tell you how many times I've been to a health fair or a public thing, and people say, "Well, wow, there's a organization or a program just for Black women," or, when I see these cancer commercials, I only see white women. I've heard that from people. So it's very important, to be representative, and that's what we try to do to the best of our ability.
And let people see
one of my favorite topics. Let's talk about some myths and some things that you have heard that people think is real and that may be, misleading about cancer, about breast exams, about any of these things. And, the first one, I'll start off the round robin, is that it only matters if it's on your mother's side of the family. Your father's side doesn't count, right?
Boy. The list. Okay. Yes. The list is very, something that you think, like I said, oh, well, that's an old wives' tale. People don't believe that anymore. You'll be surprised what people believe in 2022. I can tell you a quick story about myself. When I started working at SHARE, I told my grandmother, I said, Nana, I'm working for this great organization. I'm going to be teaching Black women about breast cancer. And she said, just very like so matter of factly, she said, oh, my sister had breast cancer. And she just like went on to doing what she was doing. And I'm just like, what? And she was like, yeah, you know, and when her husband was alive, you know, she didn't tell him, but, you know, she went to her appointments and she would call me and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, I mean, had I not have had this conversation with her, had I have not started working at this organization, how old would I have been? And I wouldn't have known. And, you know, I went and got a mammogram, even though the insurance initially denied me because I'm not 40 yet. You know, that's a whole nother issue. But I said, I want to know what's going on with my body because my grandmother literally just told me, and I'm 30 something years old, that her sister had cancer. So, you know, we have all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things that I always say is as Black women, a lot of us do not know our history. And history is very important because if you don't know where you
talk
come
about
from,
that,
you don't know where you're going. So if it's just a reminder to ask your, you know, ask your mom, ask your aunt, ask your grandma, it doesn't have to be a super invasive question, but asking them about their health, asking them about your family, that could help you. That could actually save your life because so many of us just do not know. And the myths, you know, I got hit on my breast or I fell, so that's why I got breast cancer. That we hear all the time.
That was what my grandmother said. Now, my grandmother thought that she had bumped her breast on a cabinet and that caused her breast cancer. She went to her deathbed saying that if I hadn't had that bump, I wouldn't have got that breast cancer. Yeah. And I said, no, you know, as I got older and I got to be a resident, I said, no, I said, that cabinet maybe saved your life because you bumped it and you hit it. I said, it wasn't an accident that happened because that's how you found the lump that was in there.
Right.
And she said, oh, I never thought about it that way.
I know it's crazy that the things that we think about. I mean, if you go
when the air hits it,
it's gonna blow up. Yeah, I know. We've been talking about clinical trials so much. You know, the one thing that gets to me every time is, don't do a clinical trial. You're going to get the sugar pill and die, and that's a killer to me. Like, and we're saying that in our community. That is not the case with cancer research. There is no sugar pill. You're going to get standard of care. And we learned in our research that if we explain it in the right way, we get it. But there is no sugar pill. And don't listen to your grandmother if she tells you that. Don't listen, you know, because you're going to get standard of care. You're going to get better care. And the one thing that surprises me when I say, you know, that antibiotic that you gave your dog last week was in a clinical trial. Not only the Tylenol you took, but everything's in a clinical trial. And so
I love that perspective because people think, though, those doctors just want to experiment on us. And how do we reconcile that with the truth, right? Because I don't want to mislead people because this clinical trials is experimentation. It is discovery. It is research to figure out what works the best. But when people say that and they feel like they're going to be taken advantage of, how do we combat that mindset?
We just have to make it a treatment option, Mo. Like, to me, you know, I don't even want to think about it as experimentation. It should be a treatment option. So for example, if you look at like Keytruda and Trodelvy, who they're saving lives now with triple negative. The first drugs we've had for triple negative in years ever in the face of the earth, that if you were in those trials, you're still alive 5 years from now, or 5 years versus 5 years ago. So we know it's working. We can see it working. We can see the science happening. And Black women are dying. So any chance to save a life needs to be taken. So all of these things that are options for us, it's an option for you to be in a trial, to get a better drug, to get a new immunotherapy, to get another Keytruda. So we have to learn about it as a treatment option, not just as an experiment, because you're going to get care. If there's any kind of progression, they're going to take care of you. They're going to see it. You're going to get more scans than in a normal circumstance. So it's a safe place to be. It's actually almost a safer place to be because of the attention you're going to get. And the opportunity to save yourself is huge. It's huge. It's a treatment option. So we have to get over that hurdle that we're going to be a guinea pig. You're not, because if there's anything that goes wrong, you're so closely watched. you're going to get better care. They're going to say, hold on, wait a minute, it's not working. We're going to give you something else. We're going to change the standard of care. So it really has to be looked at in a different way. I hate the words clinical trials, because clinical sounds like a science project and trial sounds like failure. Right. So if I could call it something else, I would, but we have to like look at it as it's a light at the end of the tunnel. When we're seeing all these numbers of people dying, we need that light. This is a light. This is an option that you can take, a path that you can take that could save you. So I'll get off my soapbox.
How about you, Dominique? When you hear patients say those things, they're not testing that, they're not experimenting on me. How do you talk to patients about that, or just just women in general? You can be sitting there waiting for the train, and you hear these conversations. Like, how do we combat that, and can we give people the language around that for them to do it themselves in their environments?
I've spoken to people, and that one word has come up. They say Tuskegee, and I say, oh my, and I have to go and say, well, we're in a different time now, and things are different. And as Ricky was explaining, people don't realize when you're a part of a clinical trial, you're now part of a healthcare system, and your healthcare will probably be much better. There is no sugar pill. Like, these are all the things that, as people, we've had our grandmothers and our uncles and our aunts beat into our head, and we take it as gold, right? Yes, it did happen, right? We can't, say Tuskegee didn't happen. We can't, say, okay, people say, oh, Henrietta Lacks and this and that. And I say, wait. That was then. This is now. We want you to make it. We want your kids to be healthy. We want the generations after you to be healthy. So for that, you need to be a part of this. Yeah. You need to care enough about the future generations to do this. Things are not done the way they were 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. So I want you to take that image out of your head. Just like Coca-Cola does not have the same formula that it had 70 years ago. Same with
Ricky, that's a good one.
That's a really good one.
We don't drink the same Coca-Cola, do we?
I know.
We don't drink the same Coca-Cola.
And we don't use CDs anymore, or 8-track kits.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have to put a gas in a car.
That's right.
Wow. Things change. You know what I say? When we're at the table, we're not on the menu, number one.
That's right.
Right. And number two, that when you look at, I think one of the most powerful interviews was with the descendants of some of the men who were involved in Tuskegee syphilis study. And they said, this is why our grandfather went through that. They said, well, how do you think he would respond to clinical trials today? And what would he tell Black people who are considering trials? And she said, I think he would say that he went through all of this so that they could be safer for them.
That's right.
Right? Like, that is earth shattering. Like, all this happened at the end of it. Like, let it make sense. Let his life mean something, that this now happened so that there could be safeguards, so that things could be different for you. And so that what he went through wasn't actually for nothing. That's right. And that to me was like, that was a moment, because I never thought about it from that perspective. Like, what did this person's story and their life mean in the context of all of us, and what we can do now, the privilege that we have and the opportunity that's in front of us. And the last thing I say is, to the people who believe that the body can heal and regenerate itself, and that the secrets to their life and death lie in their own body and their own genes, I completely agree. And unless we get to study it, we will never know how to deal with it. We will never know. Right? We're going to have to save ourselves here. It's us.
We are. And you know what? Black women are powerful people. I mean, think about how many things we have solved for in our lives, personally and as a community. I mean, if you look back in history, so that's why this is our job. This is our time to do our work for ourselves, for our sisters. And so, that's what keeps me not sleeping, because, it is our time right now, and we have to take care of each other. And I know, even when I look around and see all of my metastatic breasty sisters, I know I have to work for them, because I'm healthy. So, I owe it to them. But I think as a community of Black women, this is our time to do this work for ourselves. I don't want my grandbabies to ever speak the words breast cancer, if I can help it. I got about 10 years for Belle before she gets boobs. But I think we have to we have to take this on as a community, and we have to support each other and think about all the things we do support each other in. This is just another one. And this one's really important because we're dying. We're dying. And it's got to stop. The madness has to stop.
I mean, who's going to care for us more than we care for us? We can't just let someone take the helm. That's not us. We do, like you're saying, we do so much. We're so strong. We're so powerful. But then are we going to sit back and let another group say, yes, Black women, we have to have equality? No, we have to do it for ourselves. It's not going to get done the right way if we don't do it for ourselves and be at the forefront of doing it.
Yeah. I saw an interesting conversation on blackdoctor.org over the weekend. Dr. Gigi was on from Georgia, and she's going to be on our show in a few weeks. Mo, I called her and I saw her talk about this, and she did a lot of work in AIDS, and how, you know, if you think about it, when AIDS came along, and she's going to tell the story way better than I'm telling it, but when AIDS came along, it was sort of like COVID. Guess what? There were no drugs for AIDS. So everything they did was a clinical trial, right? The disease didn't exist before. So every time somebody took a medicine or whatever, it was a clinical trial in their body. And look where it is now. AIDS is is a chronic disease. Magic Johnson's still alive. How many years has he had AIDS? Like, think about it. So it works. The science works. If you put the energy around it and put the commitment to it, we can make the science work, and we can't be afraid of it. We have to embrace it.
And they changed the stigma surrounding it, which is really where we need to lean in also as an organization, you know, changing the stigma around breast cancer for Black women, changing the language around our mortality, changing the way people perceive and feel about clinical trials. Like, that's the stuff that really happened that took the AIDS pandemic into the next level, because they took that symbol from Nazi Germany, those folks who were homosexual, the triangle, right? That was upside down. They all had to wear these upside down triangles, and they turned it upright. And they said, you know what, the pink triangle now stands for life. It now stands for something else. It stands for us not being silent, because silence equals death. And that was the campaign. Silence equals death. And people began to speak out about it. And it became a moment of empowerment, a really watershed moment. And I think we need to have that moment in cancer in order to really galvanize more Black women around it. And it needs to come from our holistic doctors. It needs to come from our naturopaths. It needs to come from our scientists, from our researchers, from everybody, you know, and not just from the top, from the government, and not just from the doctors and the white coats. And, you know, it's we all gotta do it together. But that our silence, Audre Lorde said it best, our silence equals death.
It does. Yep. The secrets we keep are killing us. We can't, we got to talk about it. And so, well, you know, I'm talking. We're all talking.
I know you are. Here we are. We've been talking about it for a whole hour.
We've been talking about it.
What can other people do? What links can we put? What legislation? How can we, get other people talking about this?
I mean, if I can just say something really quick, I like what you said about, AIDS, because I can remember I'm a baby of the 80s, right? And growing up in the 90s, and I've never seen a level of protest as I have with AIDS. Like, when I think about it, people laying down in the street, people getting arrested, people, I remember the ACT UP movement. If we could apply that to breast cancer, how far would we go? You know what I mean? In any other real health pandemic, any crisis. So we have to, I remember my mom telling me about, women burning their bras. Like, we might have to go back to that, lady.
Burn some bras, right?
Right. That got the attention. And I feel like what I saw this week, we are headed back in that direction. We have to protest, and we have to, stand up for ourselves in that way. That is what matters. That is what gets people attention. And I hope that we're able to get back to that and do something like that again.
And mobilize and put energy upon it. I just put in the chat, Congresswoman Robin Kelly from Illinois. She actually has a bill in Congress that they just introduced a couple months ago for diversity in clinical trials. Okay. So, you know, the FDA just put out guidelines for how we should get more diversity. Like, what is a guideline? I don't want a guideline, I want a law. Yes. And if you think about it, like that's what happened with the Henry election, with the syphilis thing. A law was put into place to protect us. I want the law put into place to really say, you know, you can't make this drug without Black bodies.
Right.
I still want that bottle of medicine that has this drug is made for Black women and breast cancer. Like I want that drug. And so we do have to mobilize. We do have to stand up for ourselves, and we're going to keep fighting the fight.
I believe it. We're beating that drum. That's right.
Yeah. So thank you for all your work, Dominique. You guys are doing such great work, and we so appreciate you. And you know, please come back and talk to us anytime. But how can people reach you?
Yeah, so the website is.
Oh, we lost you. You went silent.
Wait, one more time.
Yeah, you went silent.
And type it in for us too.
Yeah, here, I'll type it into comments.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And for people who are in the New York metropolitan area, you certainly can reach out for support, to receive support or to be a support, right. Because I'm sure there's an opportunity for you to get involved in advocacy. You know, we see so many women who come through this process and they're like, okay, where do I start? And how do I make a difference? And how do I make this thing make sense for my life? Like God must have had a plan for me. So what is the plan and where do I get going? This is a great place to get involved and to maybe get going. So Dominique, are you able to share that website with us again? Can we hear you now?
Sure. Sorry, my connection.
Okay.
ShareCancerSupport.org, all one word.
Yep, I got it. I put in the chat. It's coming in the comments.
Thank you.
You know, people will reach out and hopefully we'll get some more stuff done. And, you know, you should come back to DC anytime. Come stay at my booth.
It's beautiful.
And rally and
come to the farm.
Come to the farm. We got a lot of work to do, ladies.
That's it. We need to have a meeting of the minds, and let's figure this thing out, because I am all for envisioning something new, right? Yeah. I know there's nothing new under the sun, but God also said he's going to do a new thing with us. So I think we need to do something new maybe and start thinking about what that can look like, in addition to tweaking, you know, putting the wheels on this thing. But what else can we do, and how else can we get it done?
All right, so I'm going to plant a little seed, and I'll tell you later, Mo. We're going to have the Untouchable Summit.
Oh, I love it.
So sit tight for more. So for the rest of the month, we're going to talk about trials. You know, May 20th is International Clinical Trials Day, so we'll make that our own holiday.
Right.
We thank you for doing this. Next week, we're going to talk to Dr. Laura Esserman, who's doing the wisdom study and lots of trial stuff. So come back to us next week. And we thank you so much for being our partner.
Reliable and real. That's what we do every Wednesday night. The doctor's in.
The doctor's in. Freshly love. Get home safe, Dominique, or come to my beach tomorrow.
Yeah. Go to the beach.
Yeah. Love you. Bye, Mo. Love you.
Guys.
Bye.